Welcome to the COSB 360 Conversations videocast, the platform for county influencers. This is an organizational and talent development initiative to engage with our leaders and keep our workforce informed. This is also one way to share the efforts of departmental staff in what it takes from a leadership perspective to keep the wheels turning in our organization. This videocast is being hosted by June Mighty, OTD Division Chief.
What are some basic concepts when we talk about, and I've been in some of your sessions, so I know that we know that it's a multifaceted discussion. It's a complex tapestry. So when I ask you this question, there's no one best response, but if you could just educate us in some basic concepts that people should know when it comes to really understanding, the diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
I was thinking about that because it's a different path and a different start for everyone, right? And I think that I've learned that either you learn that you have a lot of commonalities in somebody's life, like you and I talk about, and there's a lot of common themes in our past, but that's not with everybody. And so I thought, okay, I like to use analogy a lot, and I like to use introspect and use myself as an example quite often because it's a transition, you have to evolve, and we'll talk about evolution in a moment. But the one story that I remember is when I was 19 years old, I was injured after playing football, and I landed on a guitar. What I mean by that is I walked into my friend's place. They had a guitar, and they taught me how to play a melody. It's a very simple melody, 5 different notes. And I had time. I was young. I was injured. I couldn't go anywhere. So that day, I spent literally like 6 hours until I could master the melody. I went home. I was able to locate somebody to let me borrow the guitar, and I will keep on practicing the melody. And I will get frustrated, annoyed. Besides the mechanical parts, because you have to teach your hand movement, your muscles, your fingers hurt, the tip of your fingers started just to get cut a little bit because the strings are sharp at first, and so you have to develop the callus. And the one thing that I wish I would have been taught is the simple standard tuning for the guitar. Why do I say that? It's because the guitar was out of tune. My friend was not there to remind me how the melody goes. So I would get frustrated because it didn't sound the same, right? It didn't sound the same, and I thought I was doing it wrong. When in reality, I was doing everything wrong, but the notes were not proper.
No, you were doing it right. You said wrong. You were doing it right.
The tuning was wrong. And so it just really throws you off, and it makes you question, it delays you, it frustrates you. And so diversity is a similar approach. We have to learn the tuning first, right? Because I can tell you about this melody, and I can tell you about this chord, I can tell you about this concept, but we have to find the basics of that. And the basics is it's okay to not know everything.
Right. Okay.
And the other part is that doesn't matter how much you've researched it, how much you've lived through your own personal lives, there's still a lot more to learn. So I have so much to learn. I've learned with you, I've learned with other colleagues. And the reality is I still have a long way to go. So concepts that I like to start off with is it's okay to not know everything. We grew up in a way, let me speak for me. I grew up thinking that you had to know everything, right? Because you're in a position where they see you as the expert. And once
the expert, yeah.
And if you don't know everything, then you kind of, personally, I had this whole, I'm not very compassionate with myself. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that. I'm very hard on myself. I prepared a lot, and so I expect myself to perform well. And so
I do that too.
Right? So you can relate. And so with diversity, it's just, again, the one thing that I tell people, and I've said this in some of the sessions, is there's more than one corner to a square. And I say that because we're all in the same box, but we're all in different places. And so see the world in a different way, but yet it's the same world. We just see it differently. And understanding that is the case helps us start to open up our minds, because we have to be open-minded. Um, through this journey, I've learned not to use the word normal, because normal for me is not normal for you. It's not normal for the person above us or below us or to the side of us. And because we all have different perspectives of what normality is, right?
So Henry, with that being said, wait, this is really good. You're learning not to use the word normal, but with that being said, everyone is talking about the new normal. So what do we say? The new ambiguity? What do we say when it comes to if we don't use normal? What word would you use to describe the future, so to speak?
You know, it's, I don't think that mentally I've gotten to that point. All I know is
Okay.
the word. It's, a lot of it is maybe nuances, the nuances of life now, right? Because they're new, they are things that we are not accustomed to doing. Is we having it's made it difficult because we now have to stop and think, right? And so it's going to transition us into one of the concepts that I like to suggest, which is unconscious bias. Our brains are so powerful, and I'm not a neurologist, so I'll give you that disclaimer right off the bat. My degrees are in psychology and in human resources, but I know enough to know, and I think that everybody could relate, that there's a lot of things we don't think about doing, right? We don't think about walking. In fact, we don't even think about driving to work when we used to. I don't know about you, but I will get in my car on a typical day and then exit the same exit and almost go in the same direction to work, but it was a Saturday. It's happened
that too.
Rarely, but it's happened.
Autopilot, yes.
Correct. And that is just a way for your brain to be able to not, be efficient. Your brain is always looking for efficiency. And so when things change, that's why we're so upset when, we have to do things differently, because we have to relearn the way you do things. We have to now stop and think versus going on automatic. And that is something that, unconscious bias is one of those things that it forces us. That's why I think there's a lot of resistance to seeing. I think that all of us experience it. All of us have it. And all of us go through the period of time where you wrestle, right, with the idea, because nobody likes to say, well, what, I have biases? But we do. And I have shared some with you that I worked through, and I do a lot of introspect, and I think about a lot about the way I think. So why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? I don't know why I was built that way, but that's just naturally how I've always been. And it's been helpful through this career because it allows me to understand that my perspective is not the only perspective. And
you know what, and thank you for sharing that. I was having when you talk about there's the lack of normality, so to speak. During this time with all the social injustice issues, the riots, everything that's going on, I think the reason why timing, the way that things happen, timing is important.
Yeah.
So you have that, you have COVID-19, you have so many different things occurring all at once, right? That I think people are already in a heightened state, right? Yeah. Emotionally. So, but I have several individuals who I'll talk to, professionals, family, friends, professionals from different walks of life, because my family background and history and tapestry is varied. Mm-hmm. And so typically the diversity issue and the way that I think of life and the way that I started looking at life and the way that my mom taught us when we were coming up, she used to say all the time, she said, you need to be able to get high with the high and low with the lows. Mm-hmm. She also used to talk about the idea of being a chameleon. And what she meant is that we need to be adaptable, to our environment. So there were different things that she taught us in addition to the way that I was brought up and everything, where I never really consciously had to think about diversity, even though I'm Black women in America, but in terms of a Jamaican Jamaica is my home, the land of my birth.
Mhm.
So it comes now full force where I'm having to think about it more because of all of this discussions that are going on. And when it comes to biases, as I'm talking to different people, I'm listening and I'm hearing bias. I can hear in listening, you can hear the bias. But then, and so I'm thinking about what I'm hearing about their bias. And here's what's going on, Henry. I'm thinking about, that's a biased perspective. Well, what's my biased perspective? Well, that's purpose. And I have this thing going on in my head, you know, trying to do the perspective taking, trying to look at all the different angles, because that's what I do. Sometimes I come out of these conversations and I'm actually exhausted, right? And also, I'm also at the point sometimes where I'm like, okay, so now where do you stand after you've heard all that? Where do you stand? You know, and then also having to just go back and check, okay, now what am I biased about? So it brings all that stuff to the forefront on a higher level than it has been in the past, at least for me. Just with all the discussions and just everything. And we're going through the trainings which you'll talk to us about. So it is really just a interesting time to navigate emotionally.
Yeah, I think that we are in a position that the environment has put us in a position that we are having to have the conversations, right? Where in the past either will be dismissed or ignored, or you get into it and then you don't really hear each other. And you know geez, doing this, you have to really do a lot of that, a lot of the reflection. And I think that what oftentimes happens is, there is a reaction, a trigger that happens on one side or the other, whichever side you're in, right? So if this happens, then usually there's almost like a cliche of something that everybody repeats just because they've heard it before. And during the sessions, I do talk about having different types of truths. There's the objective truth, um, which is just something that's factual. You can't really deny that, right? And we've talked about examples. And there's the personal truth, where you see as yourself to be personal, and a lot of that is associated with how you were brought up, religion, politics, all that stuff. And it's something that you truly feel it is true. And then there's the political truth, which is what you just keep hearing and you just assume this true because you have heard it all this time,
Right, right,
right? And
right,
so
right.
what I tell people, what I recommend is usually, um, that we pause. I don't say stop, because we should never stop moving, but we pause, right? Reflect on what is it that we're trying to process, and question ourselves, okay, what type of truth is this? And then ultimately, redirect if you realize that you've been in the wrong path. And that is hard to do, and I like to tell the story is, would you much rather keep driving not knowing if you were going in the right path to your destination, or would you have stop, pull over, review the map, or ask for help, and then realize that you have been going the wrong way this whole time? And I say that because a lot of the times you'll be very upset. Oh my gosh, I spent all this time and now I have to drive back, not realizing that if you would have kept that whole path, you would have ended up in a completely different way. And it's very similar just in the way that we view things. And we do have that tendency to just chop, 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 right? We got to go, 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 go. We never really pause. And I think we have been forced to pause. As
Yeah,
a father, I have been
yeah.
forced to pause. I have now, I've gotten two more jobs in my life. I'm now, a teacher. I am now a cook. I'm now a barber. Bad at it. My son likes it, and I'm okay with that. And I'm empathetic for parents that are having to do that. I've been blessed to have the ability to do that, but not everybody has that. And so a lot of what we have to do is we have to pause to hear the perspectives of others, as instead of saying, well, they're always complaining or they're always doing this, let's just pause and let's hear them out as to what it is. And this is what transition into what we're talking about in some of the sessions. We're aiming to do is to just hear a lot of this information to be able to make their own determination. The one thing I just quickly wanted to say to you, that I've been telling quite a few individuals lately is I don't want to call them training, because I'm not training people to think a certain way. I'm like to calling them brave, safe spaces, because the idea is that the data is going to be out there, right? And it's very objective. You and I talked about is I didn't learn about history in school because of my circumstance.
Mhm.
I have learned about school through history. I've learned about history through all the research that I've done. And so you present the data out there and explain, this is why people feel this way. You make your own determination, and so the idea is to start thinking about just what is it? Why do marginalized groups feel the way that they do?